So what is the important topic? I said ASP.NET architecture. Now in that, the most important first topic that we are going to study, it's called app domain. So we require to know first what is app domain, what actually happens in it. Okay. So through architecture, we'll try to focus on the architecture of what? App domain. Okay, let's begin. Now, first comes architecture of app domain. Yes, say I'll call this ARCH app domain. Now, what actually happens in this total process? So I'll make this as completely one block for our application. Complete one block. Okay. Now, in this block, now I make first about something called browser, through which we are going to send our application for processing. Okay, so I'll write here. This is browser. Yes, this is first part. Okay, now browser will submit the application to, or will submit the form to. Yes, it will submit the form to whom it will submit. It is your server, IIS Express server. Okay, so it will submit the form to IIS Express server. Obviously, when I say it's web server only, I don't need to, but still I'll write for your reference. Web server. IIS Express web server. Now, in this web server, there is one application. Who takes responsibility of executing your ASP.NET code in IIS Express, I'm saying. And what is it called? ISAPI. It is called ISAPI. And what actually ISAPI is? It is one DLL file. ISAPI, and this ISAPI is nothing but what I said, ASP.DLL file. Internet Server Application Programming Interface, ISAPI. Now browser will give the application to whom? Server. And server will hand over the application to ISAPI. Now what ISAPI will do is, first it will activate. Yes. SAP will activate. Okay, what it will activate, that is important. It is called worker process. Worker process. Yes, worker process. So what is worker process? Before I go further on this, first let me show you a demonstration. What do you understand by this worker process? After that, we'll come back and continue the architecture. Okay. Open Visual Studio and open any Windows Forms application. Any I'm saying. Better last class application only I'll open. Okay. Last class application. Website 15, which we created for themes and skins. Okay. Now, before I execute this program, first I'll show you where to check worker process. Okay. One first identification. Run the code first. Okay, this is the output of our program. Do one thing. Go to here, IIS Express. Here, right click. Here there is something called here exit. I'm trying to close IIS Express server. Read the message. Are you sure you want to stop all the worker processes and exit all the worker processes? So we got the information about worker process. So now we have to know. It says stop all the worker processes. Okay. So what is it? So I'll show you now what is worker process. Terminate. Yes. I've closed. Now there is no IIS Express. Execute the form. Error. Why error? Because server is not available. You have closed the server. You have closed the server. So because you have closed the server, so obviously there is no question of getting. There is no question of getting what? The same page until and unless I don't again re-execute the page. Until unless I don't re-execute the page. You won't get. Chalo, anyways. Now I'll show you. Where do you find this worker process and how it looks like? What is the approach? Those things will highlight. Okay, those things we will highlight. How do you make them point? For example, right click, then task manager. Now in task manager, go to application history. Yes, here we got application history. Come down, come down, come down. You find all the applications whichever are there right now in my machine. as of now. Okay, where I'm saying application history. Okay, go to processes, and here in this processes you have currently 4 applications are running. Come down, come down, come down. Here some related with I, these are the modules. Still come down. Oracle related services are there, SQL related services are there. All the services are available. Yes. All these are applications that are running. Okay. Performance, however, we don't need now. We don't talk on that. I just go to app history. Again, go to startup. These are all about startup applications. User details. Okay. Now, this is all about services. So now what we have to do is run the code now. Run the code. Yes, executes the application. Output is produced. Go to same area again. Task manager. Now, if you just look into this application, here you find one special application that will be activated. A special application that will be activated. Okay, check here. App history. Where it is. I come down, still come down. Here it is. There should be an application now. And that application name is our worker process. App history. Users. Here I have users. Under users, you can see here. 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 IIS Express worker process. IIS Express what? Worker process. When I terminated also, I got same information. When I terminated also, I got what? Same information. Okay. Now, another interesting thing is here. Now let us come back to the architecture and I'll write this worker process is IIS express dot exe. That is our application file. Express.exe. For IIS server, you'll have this. If it is IIS server, this is IIS Express, no? I'm talking about IIS Express, you'll have this one. If it is IIS, okay, then you'll have different. Obviously, server will change. Now in this IIS Express, now internally you will be created by one block. This block, and this block is called app domain. App domain. App domain. Right. In this app domain, first, what do you find? You have your content. All server related content will be sent to browser or will be generated in the form of HTTP runtime. HTTP runtime. Yes. HTTP runtime. Okay. Now, something important in this again is, do you have only runtime content? Definitely not. Even you will have your program, whichever you have created, and that is your application. Together becomes domain, app domain. So what do we have? Application. Yes. Now what ISAPI will do? ISAPI will communicate with the app domain. Yes. And where is app domain? It is in worker process. So definitely it's simple to understand because it is in worker process. So obviously when it will come into action, only when we get activate by our application. Only when you get activate by your application, at that time you can find that app domain will come into what picture. And once app domain is activated, then it is going to make your application run, and then it will generate your HTTP content, which will be at runtime it will generate, so that it will be in browser's understandable language. It will be for what now? Browser understandable language. Yes. Say this. Say. Okay. Now considering this architecture, what is app domain? A brief description I'll write here so that instant reference you will have whenever you go through this architecture. Okay. Let's make that important part. App domain. Okay. Now, first point, how do you define app domain? You can say it is a logical collection of one or more threads within worker process. You understand? So it's about what now? App domain. What is it? Collection of one or more threads. One or more threads. What? One or more small blocks, small units in the program. Events related, you write a code. Already you have some built-in events available for your code. Those all will help you now. Those all will help you. Okay, clear now? Now, what is the other approach on this? Okay, here, if a thread of one app domain wants to access the thread of another app domain, then it has to use IPC, that is inter process communication. Yes, inter-process communication. It has to use inter-process communication. Okay, and then another point that we come up here is multiple app domains are possible, but you have to use IPC, inter-process communication, for that. So we have one more rule. A process can have more than one app domain, and each app domain is independent of other app domain. Independent of what? Other app domain. That makes third rule. Right? And finally, the fourth rule, the advantage that you have is why they are independent. Why they are independent. So rule is, if a thread in one app domain crashes, then other threads of that app domain are affected, and threads in other app domains still will still run. What does it mean? If one of the threads in one app domain is terminated, crashes, still what is the facility that you have? What is the facility you have? Still there is a possibility where you can find that other app domain threads will still be available for your working. Still it goes for execution. Still it continues execution. It doesn't stop. Okay? That is another rule. Yes. This is the small introduction on the concept of what? ASP.NET architecture of the first topic called app domain. What is the working process? This architecture. What is the working process of this architecture? What do you understand? So whenever web server receives the request from browser, provided with a file whose extension is .aspx. Understand clearly, please. Whenever web server receives the request from a file which has extension with .aspx, immediately what server will do? Server will send that request to ISAPI so that that request can be executed within the worker process. And what this ISAPI will do? ISAPI immediately activates worker process. Immediately activates worker process. If application is designed or if application is being made available on IIS Express, so it will start IIS Express.exe. If the application is designed on IIS server, then IIS server related working process will be started by ISAPI. Okay, so it depends. So for IIS Express, okay, I already demonstrated. Let's see how does it go if it is something related with this one, IIS server. Close file, new website. Change this to HTTP website. Here I simply write local host slash demo website. Some name I gave. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. I have to compulsory open Visual Studio with admin privilege. Okay. Anyways, I'll say you. However, in my coming classes when we learn this topic, no, at that time I'll demonstrate what is the worker process that ISAPI will activate. ISAPI will activate for IIS server. Simple to conclude, it is going to start something called w3wp.exe file for IIS server. Who will activate? ISAPI only will enable, will activate your worker process. If it is IAS Express, IAS Express.exe. If it is IAS server, then w3wp.exe. Okay, that is the approach. And for every website, what will happen? For every website, or in the worker process, for every website, what will happen? A new app domain is created for every web application. Even if I'm executing 10 web forms, I mean to say 10 websites, okay, that makes one web application. What will happen? It is going to create a separate app domain. Okay, and another interesting thing, especially for because this is IIS Express, which is built in. So better what I do, I'll connect this with IIS server and I'll demonstrate what is happening in it. Okay, open now. iNet MGR, that will open Internet Information Services Manager. Okay. Now what exactly you're looking for? Whenever I run my application, whenever we run our application, remember our application always will have here application pools. Here, for every application that runs on server, what is allocated? Default application pool. Default default application pool is generated. Every server will have this. The only thing, IAS Express is built in, so we are unable to come up with this point to justify, but we are trying to have similar type of concept to study in IIS server, because IIS server has one separate tool to communicate with server interaction. So you could very clearly see that there is one default application pool available in IIS server. And in that application, you can see that it shows the value as 1. Open. Yes. Here, view applications. Yes, it shows default application as root application. If I would have designed, if I would have designed my web application on IIS server, it would have shown my website name here in default application pool. This is different story that you can even add your own what application pool here. Add application pool, and you in that application pool you can add your own web application that you want to run in it. Okay, so now what exactly you find is, okay, clear now? Default application pool, you can add like add application pool. Click on this, it will ask you for that application pool name. You can add here, then automatically application starts immediately. And in that application pool you can add your application here, default application pool. Right click here. Okay. After creating your application pool, if you want to make that pool as a default, then we go with this option. Right click on that application here, set application pool default. This is one part. Now going further, what we study is our second architecture. Second architecture. Now in this architecture, we are going to talk on how a web application, how a web form is compiled, how a web form is compiled and generates what? Assembly. So this would be my second architecture. So you can say web app, compile, execute. Okay. Now, first thing, you know very well that for every web form, there is one .cs file for every web form. If your file has extension as .aspx, then web application will have that code behind file, and that code behind file will have extension as what? Dot .cs, aspx.cs. Okay. So here I say now, web application compilation and execution process. Web application, web application only will say, or web form. Web application compilation and execution process. In that, what will be there? Indirectly web form only. So we don't need to separately mention for that. Better I write. Okay. Now, first thing what we will highlight is, remember, first point. As you have, just now I said, no, what I said, there is one partial class available. Partial class available. Which file? Okay, I'll write partial class of default.aspx.cs. Yes, this is one file, partial class. And you might have recollected when we studied about partial classes in C#. And what we discussed of this is that partial class indicates that we have partial class indicates, and what partial class indicates. So what exactly I say now is partial class, whenever we find in a project, indicating that you may have more than one such class in your project having same name. Okay. Now, what is that class? Obviously, hope I even demonstrated this also. That is designer.aspx.cs from default.aspx. A class is constructed and compiled. Constructed and compiled. From which file it is generated? From default.aspx. which is actually containing two blocks in it. Two blocks. Yes. This is another block. Now I conclude. What I conclude? These two classes, these two classes are clubbed, plus operator. Together you can say these two together. Yes. From default.aspx one class is generated, and from default.aspx.cs one class is generated. And these two classes will be clubbed as one class, one block. These two classes. Yes. Combination of two classes. What will happen then? From these two classes, now what happens is we are created by one class here. Okay. And what is it? So it's called dynamic class, which is labeled in this way: default.aspx. Yes. When do you get this? After combining both the files which are generated by dynamic class. So two partial classes. And if you recollect, there was one topic we studied in my first web application of Word. First web application of what? ASP.NET. And at that time, I demonstrated. In one session, I demonstrated. So in that web application, I demonstrated that you will have web app solution, web app project. In that you'll have your file, and in that file you could very clearly notice and even in Windows Forms application also we demonstrated. Windows Forms application. Every Windows form will have three files. One is form1.cs design window, form1.cs logic file, form1.cs. Okay, three files, remember now? Default form1.cs design window, form1.cs logic window, form1.designer.cs. Here also same. Web form default.aspx, default.aspx.cs, default.aspx.designer.cs. There are three files. But if you design a web application using a project called website, then these things may not be visible for you, but internal process will remain same. Let's stick on to that internal process. So two classes will be clubbed together and will generate one class called dynamic class. And this dynamic class will be given for compilation. Yes, this class will be compiled. Compiled. Yes. And this compiled class, what will happen to this compiled class? Yes. From this compiled class, it is going to generate DLL, persistent DLL. Okay. So what it will generate? Persisted DLL. DLL, you know now? DLL, reusable. You cannot execute directly. Rules are there for DLL. And this DLL, whichever is generated for our program, executes and executes and output is rendered to browser. Yes. The DLL file, whichever is generated after compilation, will be executed and output is what? Rendered to browser. Executes and output is rendered to browser. Yes. This is the working process of your web application. Let it be on any server, whether you're working with IIS Express or you're working with IIS server. Okay, did you understand this architecture? Okay. So based on this architecture, tomorrow's class, I'll be discussing few important points with practical approach. Okay then. We will start the session.